Hello.
Hello, Vadim. Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Could
How
you
you
please
doing?
introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name Vadim Peskov, and I am CEO and founder of a company called Divka, and we do a lot of things with computer vision AI, and also do a lot of fintech, especially in Silicon Valley, and do a lot of fintech startups.
Cool. What's going on with finance industry and finance technologies during the COVID? What is your prediction for the next 10 years? What is the change and why?
Oh my! In 10 years, I don't know if we can actually predict something in 2020. Something it's a little bit unrealistic to predict something that will happen next year. I think right now, but in terms of fintech, I think a lot of things definitely will change, and how we approach banking today, we probably will see a lot of difference in terms of mobility and accessibility of different banking services, and probably we finally will get rid of some old school systems that we currently use, and probably a lot of things will be online, and I hope that all banks will work 24 hours and will not have weekends to process our payments.
Interesting. And what is the new for the finance and blockchain industry right now? And if we talk about startups, what are you watching like in right now?
Yeah, I think right now it's a few trends that I can see from different startups, and I can just name few, and we'll go from there. So basically, I think the most interesting right now that we'll see that big banks will go digital only, and they will probably have less offices. We now already have a few big banks that only operate online, but I do believe that it doesn't make sense for bank to actually have office, and everything can be done online via mobile application or website. And a lot of banks struggle right now because they're trying to compete in this market, but they cannot just do a digital product right, because they have a different understanding what the customer wants, and they believe that the customer wants security, and they want to be actually be able to call and make a transaction over the phone. But in reality, they just want to make a simple payments, and they don't want to struggle trying to set up something or go to bank and spend a few hours there. So it's a one thing that critically important. Another one, I think what we'll see, it's integrated banking, basically where we'll have different banks working together in one interface. Basically, when you can connect to your bank in your another bank, and it will work together as a one account from you. So you will be able to manage it from one place, not from 2 or 3 accounts, etc. So it will work a little bit different, and I think a lot of things will also be on. A lot of things will be autonomous in a banking, so it will just know when it should submit some payment and will suggest you to do so. So you will not, you don't need to log in each time and do it by yourself.
Tell me something interesting about crypto, maybe Bitcoin, and something interesting about blockchain. What's going on in this space?
It's a really interesting space,
Tricky.
and I think in 3 years ago it was really crazy. Right now, I think it's a little bit slowed down, and I do believe it will launch again and will grow really quickly, but in more regulated space, because still government agency doesn't want to have something fully unregulated. And it's a lot of functionality that can actually be really implemented in banking, but it's a lot of issues that this type of system is actually bringing. So I don't think in the near future we'll see something like changing Swift to blockchain. I don't think it will ever happen. But I think some concepts from this will be definitely implemented. And the second part, I think from user standpoint, it will be different type of access, regulated access to crypto that will be much easier to use. So again, right now, let's say Coinbase is allowing typical users to use crypto really easily, not really complicated. And I think it also will be more easy to use in the future. And maybe we'll be able to do something like this through our bank, through some kind of integration with these systems. But I do believe in a next year, big banks is still afraid to do something like this because I think their image will look different, and maybe only some new banks will do this, probably small ones, to do some differentiation and just focus on different type of audience.
And what are the competitive advantages for the decentralized finance, DeFi, for the blockchain and for the crypto? What do you think?
I think in reality, decentralized finance is actually really great idea, but it's a little bit hard to think that it will happen on a big scale. I mean, yes, now it's $10 billion market, and for sure it's a lot of money there. But I'm talking about trillion of dollars, and I'm talking about big banks that will have this type of integration. I think they don't want this because they believe that they will lose business if something like this will happen. And it's a little bit harder for them to just allow something like this to enter the market. What we can see, and it's actually, I think, really real opportunity if some new bank, probably app bank, so not like something like from first 10 in the market, will start doing something like this. But again, I don't think really audience really growing so fast, and so it's not. So right now it's a little bit more technical to enter the market for just regular people, and I think when we'll pass this barrier, when it's actually hard for people to enter the market, we can actually see growth, and now big banks can also change.
Interesting. And what do you see as the single most important technology trend or development that is going to impact us? Like I mostly talk about impact investment in finance sphere.
It's a little bit harder to choose just one because I think specifically this year is actually bringing a lot of different things together. Specifically talking, I do believe AI will really change how we approach things, and it's actually will be quite different. But besides AI, I think banks, or basically any financial institution, will definitely spend more time on cybersecurity, and will maybe provide some services regarding cybersecurity as well for regular customers, because they want customers to be secure. They don't want to have insurance cases in this case. So they want to actually have it in the right order. So I think, first of all, I would name few. So it's artificial intelligence, and basically in terms of helping customer to make things, and probably conversation banking also will be the case because of AI as well.
Mm-hmm. And what are the best skills do you need to be a unicorn founder, but in finance startups? What do you think?
Do you mean which
Like
skills?
a yeah, like best skills for the fintech founders.
I think it's still the same as it was previously. So it's just you need to actually be ready to disrupt some industries that believe checks is still a good way to pay money. So it's a little bit harder, I think, for this type of companies because they try to approach it from different way. Let's take as example Brex.
Yeah,
The
Brex or maybe Robinhood. It's
yeah,
completely
so
different type of the founders. It's finance founders, completely different.
yeah, so they not like a finance people, so they did it from different angle of view, and it's actually great how they do this type of product. In a lot of cases, it's really funny because how they do this product is a little bit different in terms of how they approach things. So they don't think some functionality is necessary, but after they implement this, they realize, oh, our users actually want to have this type of functionality, not because they want to use something like this, but because they still need to. So let's say we're using Rex Cash and we love the product, everything is great, but when we just started, they didn't had any option to send a check. So technically speaking, we still send in, unfortunately, checks in the United States, and it's a few vendors that we only can send checks. We cannot do anything else. And some government agency, you can only send checks. You cannot do anything else. And you need to have this type of functionality. But they initially didn't allow to do something like this because they were thinking that it's not important. But after they realized, oh no, it's important because our users still use it, and they was forced to actually provide this type of functionality, and some users still unfortunately using old technologies, and you need to account for this, and you need not only think about some great idea and some great functionalities that your users actually need, you also need to look in a legacy functionality that users still will probably use anyway.
Cool. And what is your superpower? Something you do better than other, your secret sauce.
I think I can see the right people and hire right
Cool.
people.
Yeah, it's nice. What is the next big thing in artificial intelligence, the future of blockchain, digital assets, maybe the space technologies? What is this? What is the next?
Okay, so
Maybe
the three
optimizing the
different
artificial
questions.
intelligence, maybe robotics, maybe something strong for the AML.
So let's say from artificial intelligence point of view, I think we'll have more implementation in different AI, and I think the functionality will actually grow really, really quickly. And it's actually we'll think that it's almost impossible from like maybe in a 2-3 years we will say have some functionality that looks impossible 3 years ago. But I think in a lot of cases it still will be implemented. Most of this will be only in some part of the world, so basically speaking in Silicon Valley and maybe New York, maybe a few other big cities. And I think really to implement a lot of things regarding artificial intelligence that actually will require from you to do a lot of changes in real ecosystem, how we approach things. So let's say autonomous cars is actually a great solution from one standpoint, but without proper infrastructure, we can just put them on the road because we probably would need to remove all crazy people that drive in cars, not according to any logic according to AI. So and it's definitely will be safer. It's only plant rule will be implemented and nothing else. But we can just change the infrastructure completely. So it's more challenging for AI to actually start implementing something like this. And I think we'll have a more accurate recognition, definitely, for specifically talking about text recognition, voice recognition. Right now, it's on a good level. It can do a lot of things, but this, like right now, it's 97, 98%, if I remember correctly, something like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I typically have this 2% problems because it's still there. So let's say I'm using Alexa for like last 5-6 years, and for last 2 years I'm asking Alexa to play one song in evening, just one song, and this is for my daughter, and we have this routine in evening, and one song, one ask for Alexa, and typically she doesn't understand me from two situations. So I don't know why it's really hard for Alexa to actually learn something like this, but I do believe we'll have this gap closed in the next few years. But it's actually will be a little bit probably maybe longer than just a few days.
Mm-hmm. Vadim, let's talk about millennial capital because you're from millennials.
Kind of.
What is your forward-thinking investment strategy?
So my investment strategy is a little bit different because I do a lot of fintech and I test in a lot of different fintech solutions in the same
Mm-hmm.
time. Some of them is really complicated and some of them is really just consumer banking or B2B banking. And in general, again, investing strategy in terms of how I manage money. I personally don't
Mm-hmm.
like funds. I do believe funds is kind of great way to do not think about anything. I still prefer stocks in general and mid-term, long-term investments. In this year, it's actually quite interesting strategy. What is going on? So I think I'm up on like 34% this year, so it's kind of okay in general. But this strategies is a lot of manual work that you need to do basically. I think fonts is great tool if you don't have time to think, but I do believe people need to spend time not watching YouTube videos about cats or whatever. They probably would learn more about finances, and they will be more excited to understand how it works and what they can do, because it's a lot of instruments that they probably do not understand how they work, and they cannot just read a simple company report. And sometimes it's really necessary to do something like this if you want
Mm-hmm.
to have your money in investment.
Interesting. What is the future of money and future of personal data? Maybe we can use blockchain and general data protection, how it works for the regulation. And what do you think about like the next big thing in regulatory? What is the enforcement trends in this year and maybe after the election?
So let's imagine that we'll live in an ideal world with a ideal situation, and let's imagine that government actually thinking about how to implement right things. So in this case, I do believe that personal data is actually should be earned by customer, because it's actually a product of you have intellectual property on your personal data, technically speaking. And it's a few startups. One of them we actually building right now and helping them, that allowing you to sell and get money from your personal data, because you actually still need to provide your personal data to different type of services. It's no way you can ignore it. You can start using Facebook. You can stop using YouTube and all other services. But it will probably be a little bit impossible from this point of view.
Interesting. Okay, and what do you think about? Let's talk about blockchain for the impact industry. What is the best cases in finance for the impact investment for the impact startups?
I think in this case is actually really blockchain can actually be a really big change for impact startups, because it's actually allowing to collect a lot of money without any problems. It's still regulatory issues, etc., and depends on the country. It's some problems with this, but again, in general, I think it's actually really easy to transfer and faster to transfer than everything else. And because if we'll have more projects in an impact industry and charities that actually work in this type of systems, actually will be absolutely great, because it's actually will allow you to bypass certain difficulties and make this contribution in the right way. Because if we would have a boom of let's say blockchain investments in charities, it's actually would completely change the story, because we had a ICO boom when it was 95% of scam, and if it would do the same for charity part, I think it's actually can really change the world.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think? What is the next big thing for the venture capital as a service? What do you think about rolling funds? And maybe they can use artificial intelligence for the venture capital as well. What is like the next big thing for the new finance systems and for the central banks? How
I
we
think
can like they use blockchain economy for this, and how for example, if you talk about liquidity flow, how the traditional capitals can enter to the crypto market too, and they can use for the startups new systems and new platforms like for example Republic. They can use seed invest too, actually for the democratize as investments rules.
Yeah, I do believe we can actually change a lot of things in terms of how venture industry is actually approaching this. And actually, just recently, we saw a lot of progress in terms of SEC regulations regarding specifically crowd investing. And I do believe it's actually a great tool, because when we'll have opportunity for regular consumer to maybe like not just almost anyone, but really close to anyone, to be able to invest in early stage startups, we'll have much more opportunity. And if we have something like Angel Core with opportunity to actually invest in the startups like early stages or maybe a little bit later stages, we'll have completely different market. Yes, it will be risky, and people should understand that this is risky, and they need to understand that possible return is much higher than typical investment, but the risk is also much higher in the same time. So if we'll have more platform like Seed Invest and the platform that using Reg CF regulation, it's actually will be more interesting, I think, in the market, because we'll have more investors that ready to risk, rather than more professional investors that do not believe in some idea because of some factors, but maybe people will, because right now I see, so I saw a few great examples of companies that actually kind of trying to disrupt this idea, because they do a great consumer product. And they do believe that their clients could be their investors as well. And they can provide some additional features, membership, or whatever for their clients if they become an investors. It never happens before. So basically, you're not paying $9.99 per subscription. You investing maybe $500 in this startup, and you're receiving free membership for next 5 years. So it's maybe almost the same money or something, but you getting a different opportunity, because you're not only getting part of service, you're also getting part of the company. And potentially it's more interesting for company to provide this type of service, because they can grow investment and a user base in the same time, and it will be loyal customers typically for the company, and this can actually really disrupt the industry if done right.
Pandemic outcomes. How long, how deep, and what will grow? What do you
Oh
think?
my. I think you're asking the most unpredictable question ever, because in reality, pandemic outcome in a fintech, I think, will be absolutely crucial, and it's actually changing the system how it's work. And like my banking now, a banker working from home, so and it's a little bit weird for me, and I worried a little bit more about security in this case, because I don't know if the bank done it right. So, and because I know how typically banks handle this type of things, they probably didn't done it well from first time. So they probably would update this part, etc. But I do believe we'll have a lot of disclosure of some cybersecurity breaches in this year. And this, I think, will be the main outcome from this year, because no one was actually ready to work from home. And banks will definitely provide more features that you can do remotely, because now they did some part of it that can be done online, but it's actually hard for them to implement something and do in half a year. It's typically impossible in a large scale bank. And I think in a case of next year, we'll see a lot of functional that bring in new technologies like biometric authentication and different type of second factor, third factor authorizations that they trying to bring in user devices. It will solve some issues. In mostly, it actually will not solve the issues. It actually will create the illusion of cybersecurity, and this, I believe, the main big problem in the market, because in a case of biometric, it's actually great, but it's actually more hackable than regular password. But the problem why biometric is secure, because people typically use simple passwords and they do not think about their cybersecurity. And yes, banks trying to educate people about fraud, about cybersecurity, etc. But people, unfortunately, still using single password for any type of service that they're using. And if someone was able to hack one account, they typically was able to hack everything. And if it's direct hacked, it's not a lot of things that a typical consumer can do. So I think this will be the main outcome and challenge in the same time.
Mm-hmm. And what is your advice for the startups to stay alive now?
Sell.
Yeah.
Sell more and focus on money, focus on revenue, not focus on only user growth. It's really hard for some startups, and it's really problematic. But you can actually be surprised, but it's actually possible to do business with money, not just with users. And it's really problematic for some startups to think this way and actually to believe that they need to do something like this. But I do believe if you focus on right growth, it actually will help you.
Mm-hmm. Where are the best short opportunities for the investors? What do you think?
Short opportunities?
Mm-hmm. There in finance services.
I
In
think
finance startups.
it's a startups that can actually be sold really quickly to big banks, because in a lot of cases big banks cannot create a right product for consumer. They just have a different vision. If you look on a top new banks, application banks, Brex and other like this banks, etc., Vara, and all this type of examples, they absolutely great in terms of application, user experience, etc. But unfortunately, they typically doesn't grow so quickly because they don't have the resources of big banks. And if they focus on something that can be sold and can be really implemented, so it's a really great success that they can have. So like Zelle, for example, was a great instrument that big banks started to use. And if we'll have played, let's say, it's another example that actually great from using this type of services for big banks. And again, to grow customer database from scratch is a little bit harder for startups. But if they do some right partnerships, it actually can change their growth completely. And I think this can be a really great opportunities for some investors as well.
What are some new segments or maybe new products coming from pandemic stage? What do you think? Maybe like a new products.
I think we'll have in terms of finance, you mean?
Yeah,
I think
for the finance,
I
and
think we'll
like
have
not like a traditional finance, for the neobanks too, and for the payment processing, for
I think we
this
need to
real estate.
change the way how we do KYC online, because right now it's really a little bit broken system, because it's actually some, like, most of this information could be found online. And we rely on a social security number in the United States. And it's a little bit weird why we actually rely on such a thing, because I really want social security to have a second factor authorization. I want to authorize each check of my credit, I can maybe allow to check it without anything, but I want to have options for me to receive a text message or maybe push notification from application from Social Security Administration to say, okay, I'm allowing to do this. And I think it's totally fine to develop such a system in a government level. And before we have this, and I don't believe we actually will have this in the near future, unfortunately, probably now country have a little bit different priorities. So we will probably need some system that will actually allow you to do some KYC in more in more detailed way. I think it's actually really critical, really important to do this. So it's actually the right approach, I think, for banks to change this, because now they ask you to come to the office and do things. And this is not good in terms of COVID and etc., and potential lockdown. But if they can do right verification remotely, it's not really a problem, because you can do the same verification for your credit history. You can do facial recognition, you can do voice recognition, and you can do a pattern recognition of my usage, how I'm holding my phone, how I'm walking, etc., where I'm located. So it's a lot of different factors. So it's basically behavior security. You can do all this to allow users to actually do authentication in the right way. And maybe you can ask them to do something differently in terms of security. Because right now what they do, they ask you to call. This is not absolutely secure way, because I can simulate any call I want from any number and no one actually will understand this. And I can fake my voice in a certain level, and because they actually don't really use this type of verification, it's actually will be problematic. But to fake multiple things in the same time, this will be a little bit more harder. So if they do implement such a systems, I think it will be a great success as well.
What do you think, how we can accelerate innovations and collaborate together? Because you're from Silicon Valley and you know what's going on in this technology hub right now, and how we can improve finance technology because of COVID. What is your advice and what is your
How we can accelerate?
yeah, because of
I th-
remote work, yeah, and this is
I
itself
think
is
it's
a huge
actually
problem
really
for the Silicon
accelerating
Valley.
right now. So it's a lot. I see a lot of startups that working on remotely, and a lot of VC now accepting startups that not only in Silicon Valley. I still see a lot of startups that decided to move to Silicon Valley. For last few months, I saw 5 of them that decided to move to
Mhm.
Silicon Valley, and I was like, why? Why you actually need this? Like, what's the
Yeah.
point? No one will meet you anyway. Like maybe a
Hmm.
few people, and everything is closed. So what's the point to be in Silicon Valley? Now it's almost doesn't make sense to be here. I mean, to move here and actually do something like this. I have many friends from investor community who are actually living in completely different place right now, because
Hmm.
they don't care. They where they're located. If they have internet, so okay, it's probably fine. So and this is kind of reality that we live in right now. So it doesn't matter where you located, and you can disrupt a lot of things because of this, because of price difference, and you can actually
Yeah,
accelerate.
infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, so you
Because
can
look,
actually.
look, it's same for the New York City. Yeah, it's same. You should use like the most safe place. Yeah, but what's going on with remote work and what's going on with Silicon Valley, like the hub? How we can improve? Yeah, how they can collaborate together.
I
Because for
still.
the finance services, yeah, it's it's completely different because you should be with traditional banks, yeah, and it's all about like the how you can use those opportunities.
I think traditional banks. I mean, I would not think about traditional banks as something that we. So we definitely, from fintech point of view, we definitely need to partner with them, and I think now they're more open to look into different solutions and check what is going on, etc., in a startup market. But I do believe it's they will be a little bit slower anyway. So they implement things that slow, and it's totally fine. And it's actually a great opportunity for many startups to actually start doing something and disrupting some industries that big banks doesn't look into this. And again, it's a lot of markets, not traditional big markets, but it's a lot of unbanked market in the different countries that doesn't have any bank account. And also in United States, it's some part of people that doesn't have any bank account. And big banks typically doesn't go after this type of markets. For them, it doesn't make sense. It looks strange, etc., etc. But in terms of size, it's actually really big markets. They need to have a different type of technology. You cannot just came there and say, "Hey, here's the checks." They probably would want to have some mobile payments and done it in a different ways, and they probably doesn't want to have any commissions or maybe really low commissions, etc. So that this is actually the credit in unbanked is also the second part. Not only debit, I think a credit there is actually really great opportunity. Unfortunately, this market doesn't know how to use it right. I mean, come on, in the United States, people also doesn't know how to use credit right. They just maximize their credit card and ask what is wrong with this. But in reality, I think this market is actually bringing a lot of different type of opportunities and can grow much more quickly. That's something we can see right here in the United States or in Europe.
Mm-hmm. What are your view on the environment, like the current environment, and like you views on the future, for the future, like maybe a collaboration between the different industries, for example, finance for the gaming, finance for the education, or maybe finance for the healthcare, because it should be something like like the cross platforms, but then the traditional old-fashioned industries and finance technologies can bring something new because of COVID. Like they can use gaming and education and use finance and payment processing during the gaming. What do you think? What is like a technology trends in this year, and you can predict something interesting?
I think right now we can see a lot of different things that happens in a mix of industries, and I would answer it from different point of view. So let's say, so everyone remember how Apple Pay started. So everyone like, oh, it will be great technology, etc., etc. So and eventually it was used only by a few percent and not really much, etc. And now COVID hit, and everyone asking for Apple Pay and hate when it doesn't have Apple Pay or Google Pay, etc., or Samsung Pay or something like this, because you actually need to take your real credit card and insert, etc. So it's actually completely changing this type of approach, and people already want this technology more and more, and they started asking, and vendors and stores will actually bring more this type of technology to life. But also about mix of industries, I see how let's say Apple Card now completely disrupting the industry, because it's I still believe it's a great product from Apple, and they done it in the right way. Unfortunately, I do believe Goldman Sachs doesn't done it right way in terms of support and how they approach things there, because they not consumer bank, and for them it's a little bit harder to actually do something like this. But Apple, I think, actually forced them to change a lot of things that never was real for them before. And again, this is completely changing the industry. And we have few startups that actually create a different approach. And some of them are from, for example, that allowing consumer financing. It's actually, or PayPal Credit is also kind of the same idea, but a little bit old school provider. But when we're talking about Apple Card, I think we'll have opportunity to have like installments payment for something online, not only Apple Store. And it actually will change completely how market works. And they have opportunity because a lot of stores have Apple Pay, and they just need to implement another feature there, and it will work. And it's actually will disrupt completely a different part of the market. So it's actually will create a lot of movement there, and it's completely out of big banks. Only Apple partner basically, and this how they can change the market completely in only a few years. That we're thinking, oh, it's just another technologies that no one actually will use, and but because they control this type of industry, they can do much more interesting things. Same as you mentioned as a gaming, where micropayments is really critical, and Apple's a king of micropayments. And they can easily do this, and they can easily manage this. Unfortunately, they probably will take 30% of this, but because they really growing in the right direction, I think this beacon platform like Google Play and App Store definitely will stay here for a long time.
Okay, Vadim, thank you for this conversation and this interview.
Thank you for inviting.
And see you on the next week, because I want to talk a little bit more about artificial intelligence and computer vision. And let's give some advices for the startups who want to go to the US market during the pandemic, because you're really great expert in expansion. You know this market very well, and you're actually part of one of the acceleration program from Silicon Valley. Yeah, and thank you. See you on the next week.
See you. Thank you for inviting.